Hello, everybody. My name is meteorologist Hutch Johnson. There's a severe weather risk in the southeastern United States for much of Florida, and this risk shifts to the north on Sunday. We're going to go over the details of this and the timing of this. And as we head into the evening, I'll put my hand up there because I'm blurry. I apologize for that. Let me get this focus set here. Okay, so in the peninsula of Florida on our Saturday, things get to stirring up, and the timing looks late in your day. And then on Sunday, that shift toward the north and east along the Atlantic coast has increased the risk for severe weather in the Carolinas on day two. So let's get right to the details on that. We'll get rid of my blurry face. Apologize for that. Moving right along. First and foremost, with regards to that risk today, where you see the yellows, it's called a slight risk for severe weather. This has been extended northward. It does include the Keys up through Miami. And Tampa and Cape Coral, Florida, Naples area in particular, having a decent chance at seeing some strong to severe storms, and Orlando. We'll show you more on the timing, but a slight risk doesn't mean it's a guarantee, but it means we'll see a few storms that could reach severe categories, and there is a risk of tornadoes today. I'll show the categories on this here as well, so you can see the different areas of risk that we'll have. By the way, the green areas there means marginal risk, and a marginal risk means we might see a storm or two become severe. So the risk drops down quite considerably as we get into Jacksonville and into Gainesville as well. So most of Florida, south of, let's say, that Jacksonville area, and Tampa and Point South having a risk of severe weather today. Now, the categories include hail damage, wind damage, and the like. So let's go ahead and take a look at the different types of outlook parameters that we can turn on. Let's start with the tornado risk because there is one. Now, as we take a look at this risk, there are impacted areas here. There's a 5% risk of tornadoes in places near Jacksonville, near Miami, near Tampa, and Orlando for today. So that's a pretty significant risk for some tornadoes. My thought is that many of these will be on the western side. There could be some scattered across the Maine peninsula as well. We'll go over that in just a second. So there is a risk of tornadoes. Damaging wind, that risk is about 15%. So there's more likely that these storms are going to be capable of some wind across the same area that we just spoke about, and hail. So graphically, this is a look at what the hail risk looks like and where. Everywhere that there's yellow, there's a 5% risk. What does that mean? A 5% risk of a tornado means that within about 20 to 25 miles of any point on the map, there's a 5% chance at seeing a tornado. That's what it means. It's not everybody's going to see one, but it's in this area that there's a chance of a tornado. That doesn't mean that 5% of the days we'll see a tornado. It's more of an aerial coverage of these storms. So a 5% risk is much greater than our average daily risk of a tornado. Now back to the data, and let's take a look at that wind threat, because that's the number two thing that we were seeing with regards to those. And I will move this box out of your way. You can see, again, the same area, we'll see high winds. Now, I do want to point out that this risk for severe weather does shift up the coast as we go to day two. Now, here's a look at day two where that risk is. It will be leaving the Orlando area quickly and heading up the coast towards the Carolinas. So from Georgetown, Myrtle Beach, all the way up towards the Jacksonville area, and also well, if you see, these are high wind warnings, by the way, in the dark yellow here, high wind warnings off the coasts out there south of Kitty Hawk is what we're talking about, all the way out towards the Fayetteville area, Lumberton and Clifton and Kinston as well. So the areas in yellow have the best chance at seeing weather. What are the risks on day two? Let's take a look at those, categorically speaking. Now, again, the green area that you see here, the darker green, that is a marginal risk of severe weather. It's a level 1 on a 5-level scale. That means there may be 1 or 2 storms that might get to severe categories. Severe, by definition, meteorologists, folks like me, is 1-inch diameter hail or wind gusts at or above 58 miles per hour. So if storms produce that, they can be very dangerous and are deemed to be severe. There's a better chance, a level 2 on a 5-level scale, where you see the yellow counties. Okay, that's the definition. Now let's take a look at what we are seeing as far as that risk goes for different types of wind. The tornado risk is set to be 5. I'll show you the map aerial coverage of that. That's day one, pardon me. Let me go back and switch this over to the severe weather risk for day two, categorically speaking. Now, the risk is 2%. So a lower risk of tornadoes, the way it looks right now, to my friends at the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, that produce these outlooks. So the area in green here has a 2% chance. In other words, there's a 2% chance in any area within 25 miles of a point in this green area here of seeing a tornado. That's not a great risk, but there is some. Now, as we take a look at some of the other categories here, I think the wind is going to be the primary risk as we head into the day. That's a 15% risk on day two of seeing some high winds. So similar area here where we see south of Kitty Hawk, Myrtle Beach, those areas, and a wind warning, a high wind warning is in effect. Those are for non-thunderstorm related winds. Those are just the winds caused by the storm that we see here near New Bern and Jacksonville. But the yellow area that's covered here is for thunderstorm related winds. So when thunderstorms form on your day on Sunday, there'll be a risk for wind damage, and that's wind gusts in excess of 50 miles per hour, maybe even more, with those storms in an environment where the environmental winds are going to be approaching 40 plus miles per hour. So some nasty storms that will be working their way through the East Coast states from Florida today on up to the Carolinas. Let's time all this out. First, let's show you the radar now and show you where this storm is. And to do that, I'll pull up more of a national view of the radar real quickly. And here we go. Now, the highlights are still on here for the outlook. Let me turn those off so that that clutter is off of the map. And off that goes. There we go. Now let's take a peek. Right now there is some shower activity off the coast of Florida and in the eastern Gulf. Now as we look off towards Jackson, Mississippi and New Orleans, there's some Baton Rouge showers of rain working their way off to the east. Over the last couple of hours as this loop loads, this cold, dry air that's back behind this system in Shreveport and Monroe, Louisiana, is going to mingle with this Gulf Coast moisture. This storm system drives all the way up into the Great Lakes region near Chicago with rain, and it's snow in southern Minnesota and northern Minnesota near Duluth. So this entire system is going to dig deep and interact with this, and we're going to see a deepening or a strengthening of this low pressure system out here in the eastern Gulf. As this develops throughout the day today, it's going to be later tonight when these storms hit. So we're not talking about a daytime storm system here that's going to happen in the typical midday hours on the peninsula of Florida. Let me show you the forecast now as we take a look at one computer model's rendition of how the atmosphere is going to play out today in the southeastern United States. To do that, let's get right to the data here. Let's go look at this is one particular model, and this particular model here, let me see if I can move this model up just a little bit to show Florida a little better. Okay, so this model is a high resolution model. We're going to look at a few different parameters here. This is a look at the future radar in green and yellow, and you can see that as we go into the day today, this is noon, okay? We're going to have some thunderstorms. These definitely could be strong. The initial onset storms that are moving off of the southern part of the peninsula here, not far from you in Fort Myers and the Cape Coral area, Naples, that's where we'll see a chance for some early storms that are discrete and by themselves to be quite strong. But the main low is coming with very heavy rain as well. This makes its way shoreland, and I'll show you the parameters that'll include spin in the atmosphere, as well as lift and supporting mechanisms for hail and damaging winds as well. Those increase as that low deepens, gets stronger toward the late day. You're looking at the evening drive time now. You're looking at about 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night, and here come the storms off the coast of Tampa. And this is where the spin in this storm is going to be quite strong. But they are more linear in layout here, which it doesn't necessarily reduce the risk of severe weather, particularly with this, but the severe threat will be changing from a tornado type situation to more damaging straight line winds. But here we go. Look how quickly this goes through as we go through the overnight. Now you're looking at about the midnight time frame right here. So midnight, look at where the low is and all of the activity spreading across western Florida now on the Atlantic shore. That system moves up as we head into the day on Sunday morning. This is Sunday morning at 6 o'clock. And then it continues on up in through South Carolina and North Carolina. And in the afternoon hours with the daytime heating, boom, these storms that you see forming right here in the afternoon will bring that risk for some wind and hail. You're looking at the Sunday time frame from mid-afternoon into the evening through the Carolinas. So that's a progression of our storm, and you can see that it's going to be afternoon storms in southern Florida, could be severe and bring a risk of all severe threats. But the damaging wind and the onset of these storms here to the Gulf Coast side near Tampa, near Cape Coral, will be generally at around that, well, 10 o'clock tonight and beyond, so the dark hours. So that is a look at that part of the forecast. Let me show you a couple of the parameters that we can plot with regards to the risk of severe weather. Let's take one look at what we call a tornado parameter. Are the ingredients for tornadoes there? And you will watch this, and I'll put the time or let you know the time that we're talking about with this as it rolls through. And notice most of the risk for parameters for tornadoes at this time frame, which is approaching the midnight time frame right here. This is midnight and it's offshore. So those afternoon storms that are pushing up through southern Florida, there is some parameters here where you see the gray colors, but that really intensifies closer to the low right here as we're talking around that 10 to midnight time frame. So we could have some nocturnal storms on the Gulf side of Florida that hit. We're talking about 10 to midnight. We'll keep our eyes on those and watch your local sources of information for watches and warnings there, particularly the National Weather Service. They'll get that stuff out. And it does look like that area of risk moves into the central part of the Gulf Coast side. Then as we head into the day, look at the over the waters. There's some spin characteristics shown up where you see the brighter colors here making its way mainly offshore. But as we get into the afternoon hours and evening hours, then there's a little bit of a risk of some spin, but that's mainly out over the Atlantic. So that's a look at the spin parameters that are associated with tornadoes that we're looking for. That's lift, that's spin or helicity. And now let's take a look at what we call, this is a look at a support mechanism called shear. And the bulk shear can support things like large hail. And where you see the brighter purple colors here, thunderstorms that form in those areas will have the supporting mechanism needed for wind and hail. And look at things light up. The time frame here is again 7 at night, 6, 7 at night. The storms that do form have that risk for some hail and for some very gusty winds. And this support for thunderstorms that are capable of hail and wind lasts into the deep nighttime hours. This is that midnight time frame to 2 a.m. time frame that we're talking about before it zips off toward the Carolinas. And then look at the support and intense shear that we have over the Carolinas as we go into the midday on Sunday. So that may indeed be the time where we have some support for some very nasty thunderstorms with those wind threats. That's a look at the threat that we got going on there, the future radar, and a look at what's going on right now on the radar. And basically, these storm systems are going to continue their trek up the Atlantic seaboard. I'll go ahead and put up a map here of the east coast of the U.S. so you can get a better idea of the track of the storm Sunday and beyond. And I'm going to go ahead and go with a different model here so that we can load up a more well, let's just do this guy here. Okay, so this is a North American model, and we'll look at the future radar, so you can get a feel for the what the radar is going to look like. As we go through Saturday, there the storm intensifies over the Gulf Coast of Florida. This is going to be late Saturday night, as we talked about, midnight and beyond, overnight. The heavy rain that could cause some flooding, lightning, and windy thunderstorms. Those will move up into southern Georgia, and they will briefly push through the coastal areas of Georgia. That could be very close to you folks off in Atlanta as well, particularly though those folks in and around the Savannah, Georgia area will see some very heavy rain and thunderstorm activity. And these could be some windy storms into the overnight hours. Now you're talking about a time frame that is noon on Sunday, and the windy thunderstorms will be progressing up into the Carolinas. So from basically Cape Hatteras, not Cape Hatteras. We're going to talk about our friends in Myrtle Beach, rather, all the way up to New Bern as we go up the coast with the storm. Very gusty winds with this storm that will exceed 45, 50 miles per hour and stronger at times on the coastal areas that don't have anything to slow the wind down. Heavy rains move up into the Virginias and on up into Maryland as we cross the time frame into Sunday night, and Monday morning is shown up right here. This is Monday at 6 a.m. and that storm system is already raced all the way up the Atlantic seaboard. So the storm system is going to start wrapping in some cold air on the backside of it. So the Great Lakes area, Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, you guys could see some snow and north winds across the lakes. Could bring some brief areas of snow as well as this storm exits. Look at that. There's that wraparound snow. This is on the Monday in the afternoon and evening, impacting the drive with very gusty winds from the north through all of the Ohio River Valley. So Toledo on down into Cincinnati, and Cleveland seeing some pretty brutal winter-like conditions on Monday. All right, that's a look at this nor'easter storm system as it tracks its way through from today in the Gulf Coast all the way to tonight as it moves right through Florida with the risk of severe weather, all the way into your Sunday as we go towards the midday hours. We're talking about the Carolinas seeing the impacts. That shifts up into the Virginias and basically southern Pennsylvania, including eastern PA near Philly, with some very heavy rain and ridiculous winds from the south at first. This is a timestamp of Sunday night at midnight. So very windy, very wet conditions. Once that wind shifts around to the north, cold air is sucked in, and this thing changes over to snow in the Ohio River Valley and the elevated terrain of West Virginia and on into western PA as we go into the early part of the week. That's your update. I'm meteorologist Hutch Johnson. If you got a little bit of good stuff out of this video here, I appreciate likes and shares. And of course, I'd love to have you follow the page there. Hit the little bell and you'll get a notification as to when I am on. I have 26 years of on-air experience as a broadcast meteorologist with some research meteorology mixed in, and of course teaching meteorology for the better part of 20 years as well. So love to have your comments right here. Leave them, and appreciate you. Stay informed today in the southeast United States and tomorrow through the Carolinas as a very windy and wet nor'easter works its way north